Good morning and welcome to the Amazon QuickSight Fall Learning Series. Today I am pleased to be here with Priya Mysore, our subject matter expert who will be leading us through the workshop today. My name is Jill Florent and I'm a customer success manager on the QuickSight team. What we would like to do first is actually just share with you a few kind of instructions. Make sure you're in the right place. We are going to be diving deep with QuickSight Q, and the purpose today will be to really dive into what is QuickSight Q and how can you use natural language query to design topics. One of the key components that I want to share is that you should have some basic QuickSight knowledge. This will require QuickSight Enterprise Edition, and you should have an author role with a Q subscription. So I've got a couple of links here that we will be sharing with you in the chat window. If you have not yet set up your Q subscription, there will be a link for you to do so. We'll give you some time to do that. But for any of the attendees of our live workshop today, we'll be waiving the fee for the workshop components. So excited to have you join us here today and make this a really meaningful learning experience. I do want to point out as well that the purpose of doing things live really is to go through the content and give you a chance to get your questions answered and to give you a real hands-on learning experience. We do have a question area within the GoToWebinar tool itself, so feel free to post questions in the chat window, or excuse me, the question window on the right side of your screen. These questions are not saved after the webinar. We will not be sharing these broadly, so if you post into the question area on GoToWebinar, just to note that you'll want to cut and paste those to keep them. We do also have a special treat for you today. We're giving you a sneak peek at the brand new QuickSight community, which is a great new place for asking questions and getting answers and links to resources from the broader QuickSight community. It's been completely redesigned, and for the next several days, we're going to be paying special attention to any questions that come up with the tag NLQ, which will allow our moderators and subject matter experts to quickly find and respond to your questions. This is what the QuickSight Q community will look like, and you can just post questions and answers. And if you tag your question with NLQ, it'll be really easy to find it in the search bar. Just another reminder, we will be recording the session today, and our goal would be to post that recording to our QuickSight YouTube channel by the end of the week. And so it's probably a good place to go and find other resources. We do post short little snippets a couple times a week, and then these fall learning series and more intensive workshops are generally about once a week, all during the fall and then again in the spring. So this is our 10th in-depth workshop of the series. And with that, I would love to go ahead and turn it over to our main presenter, Priya Mysore, and give us just a moment to do so.
Well, thank you, Jill. Hello, everyone. I'm Priya Mysore. I'm super excited to be here today with you all to share about our new capability, natural language query capability within QuickSight that really empowers your business users to ask questions about their data using simple natural language. I'm a senior technical program manager within the Amazon QuickSight team, and I'll be walking you through an overview of Amazon QuickSight, followed by a brief demo, and then we'll get into the hands-on author workshop today, where we'll walk through step-by-step on how to design a great NLQ topic for success. We'll share some getting started resources, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. Okay. So As you all know, Amazon QuickSight Q is our new natural language query capability. It is a deep learning add-on that uses state-of-the-art machine learning and natural language technology that empowers your business users to ask questions about their data and get answers instantly. We went live, so QuickSight Q is generally available now as of September 23rd, so super exciting. Let's see what challenges we're trying to solve with QuickSight Q. I wanted to share this exchange. Oftentimes, you're in a meeting and someone asked a question about the data and no one had the answer. You are frantically looking through your dashboards, daily reports, but that particular view or that question is not there. What do? More often than not, you go to the BI team and you ask them for help. So many of you can relate to this, and I can relate to this from my prior experience in the past as well. This happens all the time. A business user goes to the BI team to ask for help on getting some data. The BI engineer or analyst will then say, hey, could you submit a ticket and add it to our backlog? But it's urgent, like every other ad hoc request that's out there. So ultimately, the user may get back the answer to their question in a couple of days, or even in some cases, it might take a couple of weeks. So the two common themes we're hearing from our customers: how can we help our business users get to the answers faster? And secondly, how do we enable them to self-serve so that the BI team is not drowned on the day-to-day ad hoc requests and they can work on building more strategic insights, and your business users are able to get the answers faster and instantly. So this is where Q comes in. So first and foremost, it is truly a natural language search capability. Business users can ask questions about their data using everyday business language in the most natural form. There is no need to learn any syntax. Secondly, your users can get answers that go beyond the known questions that are captured in the pre-built dashboard. One thing we've learned is that in most organizations, people don't know what dashboards they have access to. There is dashboard proliferation. So Q allows you to really ask questions about all of your data that's built and not limited to what's been surfaced through your pre-built dashboards. And lastly, it's incredibly easy to get started once you have your data set up within QuickSight. Let's talk about some of the hard problems we're tackling with natural language query capability. So when we think about NLQ, there's really two aspects to it. There is the query understanding, and then you have the data understanding. So let's start with the query understanding. This is all about parsing the language structure in the question so that you can understand the user's intent. So for example, when you ask a question such as, show me weekly revenue week over week for California compared to New York in 2020. So in this question, Q needs to determine that weekly is an intent not only to group the data by week, but also implies that the user is looking for a trend. Revenue is a metric that needs to be aggregated. California and New York are states. And compared to implies that you want to see the trends side by side. And lastly, Q has to apply a filter for 2020. So QuickSight Q needs to interpret and understand all of the intents captured in the question. And also you can ask those questions in so many different ways, as it is truly natural language form. To solve for this, Q also needs to understand what's in the data. The challenge with data is that in its raw form, there's really no semantics to it. It's just rows and columns. Your data has pre-built aggregations, business logic that only BI team understands, and data can be stored in one or multiple data sets. So then the challenge for Q is making sense out of all of these and understanding and identifying what to query. So how does it all work? Let me share this. It gives you a 30,000-foot overview of what happens under the hood when a user asks the question. So in order to generate the answer, which is what you see on the far right, Q first needs to identify the intents that are captured in the question. So it needs to be able to know, what data sets need to be queried, how to link the intent that is identified in the question to the elements in the data. So to accomplish all of this, a knowledge layer that describes the underlying physical data schema is used to inform the machine learning models. The output of all of that is then used to create what we call an IR, or an intent representation, which is a SQL-like syntax that is then used to generate the visualization for the end user. To take that a step further, let's take an example here. Another example. Show me weekly sales for the last 2 years for Amazon Web Services. So when you ask a question like that, Q identifies the entities in the question. The entities can be dimensions, measures, filters, or cell values. It represents the user's intent and is used by the downstream machine learning model to link to the data. So in this example here, weekly is a date aggregation, sales is a metric, last 2 years is a date filter, and AWS, Amazon Web Services, is a cell value filter. The next thing that happens is entity linking. Here, the entities in the question are linked to the fields or values in the underlying data set. So in the example here again, weekly maps to order date, sales maps to revenue, last 2 years is a filter on order date, and Amazon Web Services is a cell value filter on customer dimension. Before we jump to the demo, I want to talk about the two distinct personas we have in QuickSight and also in Q. One, the author persona. Second, the reader persona. An author in QuickSight creates analysis and builds dashboards. And in the land of Q, an author creates topics. A topic is a collection of one or more multiple data sets. An author makes the data set natural language friendly by adding friendly names and synonyms. An author reviews and sets the semantic types on each of the fields to help Q understand the context of what is stored in those fields. An author can define filters, calculations, named entities. We will go over all of these in detail in the workshop. An author can also share topics with their readers, review user activity, usage metrics, and iteratively work with the readers by making improvements to the topic. The reader persona, or the reader or your end users or the business users, can ask questions in plain English language, get instant answers in the form of a visual, interact with the answers by clicking or changing the visual types, and they can provide feedback back to the author using the thumbs up, thumbs down options here. So with that, now let's see how all of this happens in action. All right, so you should be able to see a QuickSight dashboard here.
Yes, we can see that.
Awesome. So this is for the purpose of this demo and for the workshop, we'll be using Spotify music data just to make it a little interesting and fun. Hopefully a lot of you listen to music. I do as well. So this dashboard here is about song selection, gives me some high-level statistics or metrics based on popularity of the songs, top 10 tracks. It gives me top 10 artists based on popularity. It gives me the genre. I can see that. I also see some information around songs released over time, whether the track is major or minor, and so on. I can also slice and dice based on mood. In the music terminology, I think that's its valence. Whether the song is instrumental or the speechiness of the song, whether it's music and talk shows, whether they're based on the acousticness of the songs, danceability, and so on. So you get the idea here. So this is a really nice dashboard. But I have a lot of questions that go specific into, I want to look at my favorite songs and the track and understand and get the track details. When was it released? How does one artist compare to the other? I also want to understand how the music features have changed or evolved over time. So I have a lot of these questions on the back of my mind. And I want to compare the danceability versus energy, acousticness, and such. So to do all of that, either I have to go back and build additional views in the dashboard, or I can self-serve and answer some of these ad hoc questions myself using QuickSight Q. So let's see how to do that here. On the top of the dashboard, you see a search bar. We call this a Q navigation bar. It shows me that there is a topic built for me called Q Spotify. And when you're a first-time user, when you click into the search bar, you get this about topic experience. So there's a reader getting started experience here. It gives me some information about the topic. So this is Spotify music data from 2011 till April 2021. That's really good to know. There's some sample questions that the author who's built the topic has curated for their users. Show me number of tracks by mood. Show me yearly trend of tracks. Show me songs by popularity. Who released the most tracks? These are great questions. Some of these questions that I've been wanting to get answers as well. I can also look at what are some of the fields that's the data elements that's built into the topic. I see track details, music features. I see some filters. I can acousticness, popularity by artist, release dates. I see some descriptions on some of these musical terms. I can look at compare energy and instrumentalness, valence, and also look at track name and details. So this is perfect. So I get an idea of what's built into this data set in this topic. So let's go ahead and start asking some of those questions. So when I first click into this Q bar, since I've been using this topic for a few days, I see my most recent questions asked, and I also see some questions that are marked with a check mark. These are author curated, or you can call them verified questions, and so on. So that's great, but let me go ahead and start something very basic, and then we'll build upon and get additional insights. So as I'm typing in, QuickSight Q has several levels of auto suggestions. So this is a question level auto suggestion. I'm typing in show me number of tracks, and it gives me a list of possible questions I can ask. But for this sakes, I'm just going to ask my first question. I want to know number of tracks by artist released last year. So I'm asking a question in simple natural language. Q has interpreted my question and returned a visual answer in the form of a bar chart. Interesting, workout music, and I think that's a group that has a bunch of workout music together. I don't know a lot of these artists, but I do recognize BTS and Taylor Swift. So last year they've got 31 unique track names. Taylor Swift has released 28. So if I want to understand what answer is being generated, I can look at how Q interpreted my question. So here Q has, I've asked the question, show me number of tracks by artist. Q is giving me a unique count of track name broken down by artist. I can click on these pills and it tells me exactly what Q is generated. It is giving me a unique count of tracks broken down by artist. And I asked last year and it applied previous year on release date. This is exactly what I'm looking for, and I can give it a thumbs up. This provides the author feedback that the answer that I see is correct. I also noticed that this is the most commonly asked question, so the author has gone ahead and reviewed and approved this answer. So great, this is fantastic. So now let me look at, let me get some further insights. So I see BTS and Taylor Swift. I want to drill down a little bit further. Those are two of my favorite artists as well. So let's look at the yearly trend. So I can just simply ask, show me yearly trend of number of tracks. Now, instead of by artist, I want to specifically ask for BTS and compare that to Taylor Swift. So I can say for Taylor Swift versus BTS. Let's see what Q will do here. So now Q has interpreted my question and given me a comparison chart for the number of unique records or tracks for both the artists. So I can see here BTS is coming from artist. Taylor Swift is also an artist. It's breaking it down by release date and showing me this comparison. Interesting. So this is based on number of track records, number of tracks. Now, what if I wanted to look at this by popularity? So I see that Taylor Swift has in 2021, and again, this data goes only until April 2021. So if I want to slice and dice this by popularity, how can I do that? So I can simply say, show me yearly trend, and for Taylor Swift versus BTS, and add by popularity. So as I'm typing in, you see the next level of auto suggestion or type ahead suggestions that Q provides. This is the entity level. So popularity is a metric that's available in the data set. And as I'm typing in, Q says, did you mean popularity? I can select it, or I can just type it in as well. So the first level of auto suggestion was question level, second entity level, and Q also provides a cell value auto suggestion that you'll see in a few minutes. So now by popularity, I see definitely BTS is going up higher over the years. So now Q has interpreted my question and given me the average of popularity score for BTS and Taylor Swift by year and artist. Now you might wonder, why is it doing an average of popularity, and how does it know how to link that together? So as I explained in the presentation earlier, Q understands the intent of the question and recognizes the entities. So if you look at the Q bar here, yearly is underlined, so is Taylor Swift. And so these are entities that Q has recognized, and behind the scenes, it links it to the underlying elements within the data set. There are also semantic types or metadata enhancements you can do within the topic, which we'll go through in the workshop, that allows Q for better answer accuracy. For example, popularity, you can set the default aggregation to average versus the sum. You can also change it over here if you want to look at it differently, and if you want to look at it by a different aggregation. But if you want the end users to not worry about these nuances, an author can pre-configure some of those. So those are some of the things we'll talk about in the topic design. So this is great. Now, also, if you click on each of these pills on the Q bar, this is where you can select, if Q did not pick the right answer, you can select the exact entity or the dimension that you want it to link to. So in this case, Q picked Taylor Swift from artist, but Taylor Swift is also an artist too, and you can also scroll through and see some of the other options that are available. We'll go through some more examples. So now let's look at something slightly different. I want to look at number of tracks by mood released last year, or the valence description. So let's look at number of tracks by mood released last year. So as I'm exploring here, now Q has given me a unique count of track name by valence description. So that is what is linked as there's a synonym behind the scenes for mood, which is valence description, and it shows me for previous year. Now this also has been reviewed and approved by the author, so it looks like a more popular question. I can change the visual types here and look at it in the form of a donut chart as a reader. So I can hover over and see 53% of the tracks are happy, 23% are cheerful, and 23% are sad. So I can change the visual types. I can also look at it in a tabular form, and I have the ability to export to CSV and Excel as well. So now let's look at a few other questions that I have in mind. Let's look at songs by popularity in a particular year. So show me songs by popularity, let's say in 2019. So as you see here, as I'm asking the question, Q is interpreting my question and applying a filter for 2019 by track name, and it gives me by popularity score. This is great. Let's see, I know this song, but if I want to get more details, how can I do that? So I can just ask Q, show me track details. So as I'm typing in, you see that it's giving me auto suggestions for entities as well as cell values in my data. So I can ask for show me track details for, I can just type in someone you loved. And I want to make sure that it is from the same time frame in 2019. So now it gives me details such as Someone You Loved is by Louis Capaldi. Release date May 17, 2019. It is a happy song, very loud, popularity score of 90, and energy level of 0.41. So it gives me some details. And I can also look at some yearly trends as well. So, and then now let's take an example of something slightly different. So let's look at, show me danceability by country. So as I'm typing in, you see that Q is suggesting that there's danceability description, and there's also values within those fields. Which one do you mean? For now, I'm going to stick with just the high-level danceability and break it down by country. Now note that the country field is augmented, so the data is fabricated slightly. So what you see here is just a representation. So here I see Q is also geo-aware. So country is a location attribute. It is now telling me the danceability score in the United States is 0.63, in India is 0.68, Australia is 0.62. Now I can also look at comparing danceability versus energy by country. So let's see how we can do that. But here, if I don't want to look at it in a map visual, I can also change this to a table, and I can sort this in descending order and look at the results in a tabular form as well. All right, so now let's look at a few more questions, and then we will go to the hands-on workshop. So let's look at, if I want to look at comparison between danceability and energy. But show me danceability versus energy by country. So these are two descriptive features here. Now it's giving me a table by default, which is great. I can look and compare for Australia where the average scores are. But I can also look at this in the form of a scatter plot, which I think will represent nicely based on if you had a lot more data points. But over here, I can easily say India has high energy and danceability. Canada has a higher energy and lower danceability here. So it gives a good representation via scatter plot. So now let's look at these. Q can also answer top bottom questions. So if I wanted to ask, show me top 5 songs that are happy, I want to also put some mood in there by popularity. So I can go on, and my questions are endless. I can just ask questions in Q all day long. So show me top 5 songs that are happy by popularity. So it gave me a track name called Happy. That's not exactly what I asked for. So I have 2 options here. I can mark it a thumbs down, and I can also send this to my author and say, hey, I don't think I got the right answer, and I can select what missed the mark. The answer, Q question was misinterpreted, and I can say why. I asked for happy as a mood, and I can send this to the author. And when we go to the workshop, we'll see how this feedback comes into the author. But I can also disambiguate and fix this because it is truly machine learning and natural language query capability. It gives me the ability here in the Q bar to click on, first to understand what Q returned. It said it applied a top 5 filter by track name, but happy, actually, it took the track name. So let's see what's going on. So I can click on happy in the Q bar, and as you see here, there's so many values in my data with happy. What I actually want is by mood. So I want the happy by valence description. So now you see here, Q returned the top 5, and you might see more than 5 because there's a tie in some of the scores. So you will get 5 unique values here. So I see that Blinding Lights is really the top track. So let's see who sang Blinding Lights. I think I know, but let's ask you, who sang Blinding Lights? Should be The Weeknd. Let's see. Yes, the artist is The Weeknd. Now, where was blinding lights most popular? Let's ask Q. Now, again, this could be just a fabricated data, but at least you see how Q can answer who, when, and where questions. So it says United States. Well, I believe that. And when did blinding lights release? Which we already know. We can look at some of that, but let's just ask you that question. March 20th, 2020. Awesome. So now let's just look at a couple more questions. If I want to understand the growth percentages of the number of tracks year over year, how would I do that? I can actually simply just ask you, what is the growth percent? And I'm just asking the question as I just asked myself. What is the growth percent of number of tracks year over year? So Q understands MOM, which is month over month, year over year type of constructs. So this is giving me a unique count of track name percent difference year over year from 2020 to 2021. Note that 2021 is just partial year of data. So that's why you're getting smaller numbers. But Q is able to answer and give me a growth percent. So now if I want to ask this for a particular artist, I can just build upon this. What is the growth percent of number of tracks year over year? Let's just ask for Taylor Swift. And so now it's giving me unique count of track name percent year over year for Taylor Swift for 2020 compared to 2021. Again, 2021 partial data. So it's giving me a negative number. Okay. So, and then one last question types. You can like Q supports YTD, month to date, so year to date type of questions as well. So I can simply ask total tracks released year to date. It should give me a total number of unique tracks for this year as of April 2021. So I can also ask number of tracks released month over month. And now this should break it down for March versus April, the most recent months. I can look for a trend of this and say number of tracks released by month, month over month. Let's see how Q answers this question. Fantastic. Q is now able to understand. I asked for the tracks released by month, and I wanted to see the difference month over month. And it's given me a unique count of track name difference month over month broken down by month. I can also look at this in the form of a bar chart. I think shows a really nice representation. All right, so with that, the demo portion is complete. Now let's see how we can actually build a successful topic on this data set to be able to answer some of these questions. So before I jump into the actual hands-on workshop component, just wanted to pause and see if there's any questions that I can answer.
Yeah, you know, there are some really great questions coming in. Maybe one of the things that you could comment on, do we have any, we do have a couple of questions about when Q will be released in additional regions. I don't know if we are sharing yet any timelines for Asia or Canada or Mumbai regions. Are those all still kind of in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we are looking at Q regional expansion based on demand. So definitely there'll be more regions that Q will be made available in the next year. So we don't have, we'll send more information as it becomes available through the community.
Okay, great. And then there's a question on whether Q is case sensitive.
No, Q is not case sensitive. You can ask the question pretty much in in mixed cases, it will recognize, because it depends on your data. If you have a lot of data in this particular format, it might, due to the algorithm, pick those more readily, but no, it's not case sensitive.
Awesome. And then there was a question earlier, I think that we provided a response, but maybe you can comment a little bit. You were asking a lot of questions that started with show me, and there was a question that said, do we always have to start with show me? And maybe you can comment on just what kinds of question syntax approaches should be used.
That's a great question. And actually, I'm going to be addressing a lot of these questions in the actual workshop as we're building the topics step by step. But to answer this question quickly, you don't have to say show me. You can just ask the question the way it is. Just say number of tracks or list of songs. And so we're going to get to do all of that in the hands-on activity, and where you can follow along and build along with me, or simply watch as well and do it on your data afterwards. So we'll get through a lot of these types of Q constructs and stuff in the hands-on section. But because it is not a token-based or a search-based or faceted-based product, it is truly natural language constructs. So you can actually ask the question in many different ways. So as part of the author, this is the demo here that you saw is more from a reader standpoint. From an author standpoint, we'll go through mark as reviewed, link to visual. There's also additional question variants. There's a lot of things you can do as an author, but you really don't have to stick to a specific natural language format.
Great. There's a couple more questions, but I think that we should kind of jump into the next section. I think some of the questions will be answered during that time. There was a question about how best to handle partial data and just the impact of trends if we're dealing with partial data. I'm not sure if this will address that, but looking forward to getting into the next section.
Sounds great. And also just to note, we'll get through in the next hour or so. We'll be building this topic, and then there'll be some more time in the end, focus time, after you build the topic and understand how Q works. We'll address a lot of these questions. All right, with that, I want to jump into the how do you build a successful topic and make it natural language friendly for an enhanced reader experience, such as what you just saw here. Okay, so let's go into the QuickSight homepage. So I wanted to make sure before we proceeded that folks here are able to, they have a Q subscription and they're able to see topics. The first step you want to do right now is see, once you log in, and I'm going to change the region here. So you are able to see on the left-hand side, when you log into QuickSight, that you're able to see what's called the topics. This is a prerequisite for this workshop, that you need to have an Enterprise plus Q subscription. So I'll just maybe give it maybe a minute for folks to log in. And the next thing I want to call out is in the handout section, there is a file which is called spotify.xlsx, the Excel file. That is the data set that we'll be using for this hands-on portion. So wanted everyone to download that and on your desktop. So we're going to start with importing that file as a data set within QuickSight. Okay, so when you go ahead and click on data sets and select new data set. In the options here, you want to select upload a file and select the Spotify file from your desktop. And this will take a few minutes to upload. I think there's about 100,000 rows in this sample file. So for folks new to QuickSight, these are all the connectors that is available within QuickSight today. Q works on any data set that you bring within QuickSight. It could be in direct query connection, so you can directly connect to Redshift SQL Server, or you could also bring in the data into Spice, which is our super fast in-memory calculation engine. So it works. Q topics can be enabled on either of those connectivity options as like within QuickSight. In this case, we're going to pick an Excel file and it's going to be loaded into Spice, which is our in-memory engine. And you want to click the tab Spotify. The first thing we're going to do is preview the data to make sure that the data is coming through correctly before we create a topic. So as you see here, this is the QuickSight's data prep screen. It shows the number of fields that are brought in. One thing I always check for is when you bring in an Excel file or even some of your data sources, the icons indicate what type of data it is. This is a categorical or a string, a dimension, artist ID. The hash sign here indicates it's a numeric or a measure field. And I also look for dates. Sometimes dates don't come through correctly. So in this case, you see here release date is coming through as a string type. So what we want to do is change the data type for the release date field, and you want to make that a date field. Now, QuickSight is saying, this is not the right format, so we do have to specify the format here. So we're going to say DD YY and hours and minutes. And then you want to hit the validate option here. It says your date format is valid. So I'll pause here for a second so you can take down the syntax here. Let me see if I can add this to the chat. Okay, and now you want to update. QuickSight data prep layer gives you a preview of the data here. So you can look and see what data is coming through. Some of these attributes are sparsely populated, but you see most of them are coming through correctly here. All right, so now we want to select save and publish. So we're publishing or saving the data set. And if you notice here, Excel files, since it's not connecting to a data source directly, it's a file, it's automatically, the query mode is Spice on the left-hand bottom here. So this will be loaded into the Spice engine. So we'll hit save and publish. Now, if you want to work on QuickSight analysis and dashboards, that's when you would hit publish and visualize. For the purpose of this session, we're going to strictly focus on building a successful natural language query topic. So once it's saved and published, hit cancel. So now we have the Spotify data set here. And now we're going to go and click on topics. So a topic is a collection of one or multiple data sets that usually represents a subject matter, such as, you have sales, media, marketing, it could be a financial topic. In this case, it's a music related topic. So let's go ahead and create that new topic here. So also a note, QuickSight Q can be used within the QuickSight console. You can also embed the Q bar in a standalone application, just like how you can embed QuickSight dashboards today. So just wanted to call that out for folks who are wondering, can we use Q as a standalone? Absolutely. if your Q topic and your dashboard is built off the same data set, you can layer it on top of each other, like how you saw in the demo, which allows your readers to get additional insights in addition to what's built in the dashboard. Or from any screen here, as you see here, the Q bar is present. You can select the topic and ask questions. You don't really need a dashboard. That's the whole idea. You can ask questions about all of your data, or you can get additional insights about your data. So let's go ahead and create that new topic here. We'll call this Q Spotify, or whatever name that resonates with you. You can call it music, song selection, and you want to provide a brief description, because when you hover over the topic, this is what your users or end users see. Spotify data, music from 2011. Songs by artist, release date. So you can provide a more detailed description here, but we'll continue with this. And I'm going to say popularity. All right. So there are two ways to create a topic today. One, you can select your data set. Two, you can select the data sets that will be, when you select this option, these data sets will be imported from a QuickSight dashboard. So a lot of customers, a lot of you might already have a QuickSight dashboard, and you may just want to bring in those data sets. Now, the recommendation is that you start simple with a single data set so that you understand how Q works, how the natural language query capability behaves, before you get more advanced with multiple data sets. And we'll talk about some of those nuances. So I will select data sets, and you want to bring in the Spotify data set that we just uploaded into QuickSight. Click Add Data. So this brings you to a topic landing page. On the left-hand corner, you see that you're getting a message that says Q is indexing unique string values. In the meanwhile, you can review and edit field configurations and data tabs. So what this is doing, so Q is actually, when you build a topic, you're not recreating the data, but what Q is doing is creating unique, it's indexing unique string values and spinning it up into a cluster, Amazon Elasticsearch cluster. That's what allows you to get all those auto suggestions for cell values. So every time you change, your data set changes, whether it's new fields, or if you have new values coming into your data, you'd want to refresh your topic. And you can set refresh schedules as well. So there are really four components to the topic here. And I'll also talk about 4 to 5 best practices when you want to build a great topic. So first, let's look at the summary tab here. This gives you some suggestions, exclude unnecessary fields. So you can start to do that right away. But before we get into that, I want to also show you some of the features here. So as you start designing and using the topic, you see the statistics over time. You can also see the distribution of feedback from your users. You know, how many questions received positive, how many negative, and what feedback and such. So as you use your topic, these stats become more populated. Right now, it's a brand new topic. Towards the bottom here, you see this is where the data set configuration and options exist. So I can click on this, and it tells me that the Spotify is a SPICE data set that I brought in. I can change the friendly name here if I like, if I choose to. And it also says the status, it's in progress, but I can still work on enriching the metadata. So 2 things I want to call out here, the time basis and the default date. This tells Q what the grain of the data is. In this case, it's a daily data set. And if you have multiple dates in the data set, you can set a default date. So every time you ask questions over time, year to date, month to date, Q picks that automatically. If not, Q will prompt the user and say, what date do you want to select? So it depends on your data and also your audience and whether you want them to disambiguate on the fly. In this case, it's only one date here. So let's go ahead and select release date. This is There's also a schedule refresh capability now. You can add a schedule for the topic to refresh every time your data set changes. So you can certainly do that as well. So now let's go into the data tab. That's where we'll be spending the next 35 minutes in configuring this topic. There's really 5 important steps for building a great and successful topic. The first step we did just now, we added a data set and we created a topic name. So that's fantastic. Now let's look at what are the next things that we would want to do. Now again, since it is natural language capability, you don't really have to spend a whole lot of time, but the more curation you do, the better Q is going to be able to provide the answer accuracy, and it learns over time. So there's some level of curation that's needed for a successful topic experience for the readers, and I'll walk you, and we'll go through that step by step. The first thing I would recommend is to exclude fields that are not relevant for search, which is what the summary tab suggestion indicated as well. For example, if you click on artist ID, you see value previews here. This is not really relevant for search. No one's going to ask, show me the artist ID. So you really don't want to confuse or you can deselect or exclude that so that it's not confusing for the readers as well as for Q. So you can actually search for all the ID fields on the filter by fields here, and it'll give you the list of fields. But in this case, I only want to exclude anything that says ID. This is a metric, so we'll leave this, and you can exclude ID track. You can exclude artist 2 ID. And there's, I believe, artist 3 ID as well. So you can go ahead and exclude those. And as you're working through the topic design is an iterative process. So you don't necessarily have to do all of it at one time. So as you're setting those attributes or defining some of these, you can iteratively work on setting some of these metadata enrichments. So the first thing you want to do is exclude fields that are not needed, which we've done. The second most important step is to make sure you provide business-friendly names and synonyms. So why is that important? Because Q is natural language capability, most of the times the data sets that you import will be very database friendly, column names, structures that the end user or the business user will not understand. So it's very important for the author who's curating this topic to really know who they're building this topic for and sort of understand what level of insights that the end user community might want to ask and provide those appropriate friendly names. So since this is a sample data set, these names are pretty descriptive, but I do want to make some changes here, and I'll explain why. So as you see here, there's a lot of artist information, artist ID 1, 2, and 3. So if you ask a question, show me number of artists, really Q will say, Q will pick this field that says artists because that's what it automatically maps to. And this artist is a concatenated field. So what I want to do is turn this off for now. And I want to take artist 1, which is the primary artist, and call that artist. So I want to change this and make this the primary artist. And I want to add some synonyms here. And I can reference artist as artist name. And I can also, sometimes people may want to say artist with the plural form. You can do that. The next thing you want to look at is some of these attributes here for a dimension and a measure. Since artist is a string value, it also gives me information that the actual, even though I changed the name, the actual field is artist 1. So yeah, so I guess I cannot provide artist because it already exists in the data set. So that's fine. I think since even though we've excluded it, Q does not allow you to have duplicate synonym names. So artist name is just fine. So in this case, it is a dimension. And if I want to say, show me number of artists, I can set whether I want it to be a count or a count distinct. If I don't specify, it'll do a count. But if I say I want a unique count of artists, I can specify that default aggregation here. An artist. So when we ask the question, for example, let's try this out. We asked the question, who released the most tracks last year? Or there was another question, who sang Blinding Lights? So let's first see if the topic finished here. Yes, the topic refreshed 5 minutes ago. But you don't need the topic to refresh to ask questions. Where it'll come handy is when you want to search on cell values. You do want the topic to be fully refreshed for those particular questions. So we asked a question, who sang Blinding Lights? Now, in the demo, you saw that Q brought back the answer. But now Q is asking, what do you mean by who? It doesn't really know what who is, so so you have to disambiguate this. So your end user, you may not want your end user to do that. So if you go over here and look at artist, and under the semantic type, you can set an artist as a person. So this indicates to Q, when you ask the question, who sang Blinding Lights, it will link who to the artist and should come back with The Weeknd. So these semantic enrichments are updated almost instantaneously. There are some that take a few minutes, which I'll go over as well. So now let's look at a metric, for example, popularity. A popularity score indicates I think, if you look at the values, it's a score based on how popular the song is. When I ask a question, show me number of songs by popularity, it would automatically sum the score. That's the default that's built in. But I actually don't want the users to know what to do. I want to tell Q, hey, every time somebody asks a question on popularity, just set it to average, because that is the aggregation that I want that metric to be built off. So you can set the default aggregation for KPIs here. In this case, I don't want to set any semantic types, and you can always come back to this and change the format, the subtypes, and so on. Now let's look at date. Now in this data set, there's only one date, but if you did have multiple dates, you can set the default date as I showed you in the earlier screen. And you can also set semantic type as date. So whenever you ask when questions, it automatically knows it will pick date, but it just makes it easier for Q. Now let's look and see what additional enrichments we need to do. Well, valence descriptions. We talked about this quite a bit in the demo. Most people won't understand most people won't ask a question, hey, show me songs by valence description. They want to look at the mood, whether it's cheerful, happy, or sad. So those are the values for that field. So in this case, let's just go ahead and add a synonym and say, people might reference this as mood. There could be something else that people might use this field as. You can always start initially and build upon additional synonyms. So we can start with something simple. Now, that sounds great. Now, track name, there's a lot of questions we did on the name of the track. So let's go find that. And I can just search for it in this fields here and look at name. So it brought back synonym, artist name, and it also brought back a field called name. Now this is a bit confusing if it's just called name. So let's just make this track name. And let's give it some synonyms here. It can be called as a track. We can call this tracks. We can call this songs or song. Let's go ahead and add a few synonyms here. And also album. Some people might reference this as, we don't have an album, but they might ask questions on, show me number of albums. So we'll just put in the synonyms here. The other thing is, depending on the data, whether there's the grain of the data, if you ask a question, show me number of tracks, it's going to do a count. Now, let's just ask that same question that we asked in the very beginning, which was, show me number of, so as you see here, I only have one question. This is a brand new topic. You're now building upon some of your questions, and then you can also, I'll show you how you can verify some of these answers. So we'll go through those steps here. But if I ask the same question, show me number of tracks by artist released last year, it's going to give me a count. It's going to give me a count of track name. So in this case, Taylor Swift, BTS says 49, but you really have to look at the data to see, do you want the number of track names or do you want the unique count? So there's two ways you can do this. You can leave it open and have your user say, show me unique number of tracks. So they can ask questions in natural language. It should bring back unique number of tracks. So now it gives you a unique count of track name. You can leave it, or you can set the default aggregation to count distinct. And then the user or the end user doesn't have to know. Yeah, so now, as you see here, I asked the same question, show me number of tracks, and it picked a default aggregation of unique count. So as you see here, the more you're able to understand the data and curate the topic, the more at ease Q is able to understand and generate those results. The next thing you'd want to do, since we're working on this topic, is take a few measures and set the default aggregation to average. In this data set, most of the metrics, danceability, valence, are all, it makes sense to do an average score versus a summation. So you'd want to do a few that you want to test out with and set it to average. The other thing I want to point out is country field. If you open up that, this is the data is augmented, so keep that in the back of your mind. But you see here the value previews, these are countries. Now, you saw in the demo that when I asked a question by country, it automatically defaulted to a map visual. So if we want Q to understand it is a geo field, simply go to the semantic type and set this to location. So this really tells Q what is the field or the data or the values that are stored in the field. So identifiers, like for example, if you have IDs, you can say that it is an identifier. This is the location attribute. There's also a field called release year. If you notice, that is a numeric field. But release year is actually, it's a year, the values are years, but it came through in the data set as a numeric column. In this case, you can set the semantic type as a date part and select the semantic subtype as year. This tells Q that the value that's stored in that field is actually a date of type year, even though it is a numeric field. So as you can see here in the icon here. And you can set you want to show this as a number, and you don't want the commas for a year field. So you may want to set the format to 1, 2, 3, 5. So if I ask the question, show me number of tracks by year, and if you want to test this, it gives you release date, but you can select the year and disambiguate that to release year. So as you see here, now it plots by year. A little bit of nuance here. I think we can sort this out, the sorting manually. So now it gives me unique count of track name by release year, and it's using year as a date. So when you're an author of a topic, you see this badge or this third icon here. It is improvement suggestions. So as I did this, it's asking me, do you want to save year as a synonym for the field release year for all future questions? Yeah, sure. I'll just save that. That way, next time it doesn't prompt me or it doesn't select a release date. So you can save some of those suggestions. These are author functions only. Only an author will be able to add metadata, synonyms, do the enrichments, and so on. Another feature that's for author is the mark as reviewed. Marking query as reviewed ensures that you've reviewed this and you've approved. And it gives the user, when I click on this, it gives the user some sort of indication that, hey, you know what, the answer that I'm seeing has been reviewed by the BI team or someone in the team. So it gives some level of confidence. Oftentimes, authors ask me the question, well, how do we know, or how can we trust the answer that Q provides? My response to that would be that there's two things you want to always check. You've asked a question, or the one most important thing to check is, how did Q interpret my question? So it's every time you want to make sure that you can click into this and it's picked the right sort of linking, because it is ML powered. There's an algorithm running behind the scenes. So you might have said, like, for instance, the happy one. Q thought I meant happy as a track name, but it doesn't. The user's intent could be anything here. The user could have asked, I just want happy track name, or I wanted happy by mood. So I think the beauty in Q is it does allow you to have that capability where you can disambiguate and figure out and slice and dice in many different ways. The opportunity for authors is also to ensure that your readers, depending on the level of knowledge they have on the data, also have a good experience. So some of these knobs, like verifying the answer and picking the visualization and marking it as reviewed, just binds that answer to that question so that the end users are not trying to figure out how to do this. So like I said, it depends on how mature your audience is. You can also add question variants. This is where, if, for example, let's say there's a question that you have set it to a certain way, but then the users might ask it completely differently. You can actually just say, for this question, show me number of tracks by year. For example, somebody, and this is just an example, show me albums, or show me track albums, for example. If this was a valid question, you can just save that as a variant. And if you ask this question, in this case, it may or may not make sense, but as an example, it will now bind, it'll take the variant of that question and it'll bind it to that same answer. So if there are examples of situations where you may want to ask, your users may want to ask a question that, that requires some level of adjustments from the author, you can certainly put those variants as part of that question. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this. This may not really make sense here. Okay, so now let's see. So we talked about step number 2 was excluding fields, and step number 3 was setting the semantic types, synonyms, and so on, right? So let's do a few more. There is something called tempo here, and we just want to call that beats maybe, so that you can play around with, this is beats per minute, loudness description, and so on. So the next step here, really the 4th step, is to share this topic. Once you've curated this, and let's say you've tested out a few questions. So I can go ahead and test out some of the other questions that we worked on, which is, let's do one more. Show me number of tracks by mood released last year. We know that we put a synonym for valence description as mood. So that returns. So I'm feeling pretty confident about this topic. It's a simple data set. We've curated some of the attributes here. Really, the next step would be to share your topic. Just like in QuickSight, you share your analysis and dashboard. You can click on Share button, and you can select, for example, a coworker. Let's see, Prachi is a coworker of mine, and I can select the person, and I can share this as a viewer or as a co-owner. So in this example, a viewer means a reader in QuickSight. If I share this topic as a reader, my coworker can only see this, the Q bar, will not be able to see the topic configurations. So for your end users, you would want to select viewer. But if you want to share it with another author so that two of you can work and fine tune the topics a little bit more, you can share it as a co-owner. All right, so I can hit share, and this now topic is shared to multiple people. So that's how you would share. The next thing you'd want to do, once this is shared out, and now you can also explain to the readers that the product has built in a getting started experience, which is still being worked through. This is just the beginning. So there's going to be a lot more enhancements here. But this is a quick way to get started on what the topic is. But as you notice, there's no sample questions because we haven't really verified any or put together a few questions for getting started for readers. But it also tells you all the fields that are available within the topic. So let's go ahead and verify some questions. Let's say that we're going to launch this to a set of pilot users. So we can just take some of the questions we were just testing. Show me number of tracks by mood released last year. And I can just click mark as reviewed. Now this creates a review sign. And let's do a couple more. Who sang Blinding Lights? And we'll mark this as reviewed. And show me number of tracks by year. That's already reviewed. Let's look at show me danceability versus energy by country. This is something that we did in the demo. Now, a couple of things here. So when I asked this question, I know I changed danceability to average. But as I mentioned to you before, metrics by default, the aggregation is sum. In this case, we don't want the sum of the scores. It does not the right aggregation. So let's go ahead and fix that. So let's look at energy. I can scroll down or I can also search. So here I want to select the energy field and I want to set it to average. And now I want to ask the question again. So as you see here, it's very easy to sort of ask the question, test the topic, and fine tune it, curate it, and then ask the question again. And now the users are going to get the right answer, which is average of both of those metrics by country. I can switch this to, if it makes sense, to show points on map. So that's one option. Let's see if I can play around with different visual types. Yeah, this looks good. I can mark this as reviewed as well. If you want to change something, you want to unmark as reviewed. And maybe let's change this to a line chart here. All right. So I'm going to pause here for just a minute.
Yeah, Priya, we might have just a couple of lingering questions that could use some on-air discussion. One question was, when adding synonyms for fields, should we specify both singular and plural?
Yeah, great question. The answer is it depends. You don't need to. You don't need to, but it's a preference. I prefer it because people can ask different ways. Let's take an example. If you don't specify singular and plural, Q will make the association and pick that right field. So definitely the answer is you don't need to. It's just my personal preference. So for example, we can, and the way to test it out is simply by trying. Let's take that example. I think I did that for track. And you will notice that I have singular and plural, so great observation, and we'll just take those out. Now let's see if I say show me number of tracks. Really, people can ask track, people can ask tracks. It'll pick the track name. I don't really need the plural synonym. As you see here, tracks went to track name, which is what it is, even though I specified tracks. So because it is natural language and ML capability, you don't need to specify every combination. I think it's just a habit of mine. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that was super helpful to talk through the context. Another question we have is, can we have questions like, show me the rolling 6 months average count for follower?
Wow, that's a great question. Rolling 6 months average. So right now, Q supports like growth percent calculations, year to date, month to date, and so on. Some of the more, since we just launched, we're adding newer capabilities. Some of those questions you can ask by creating calculated fields. So it's a great segue. If I may just show that capability. You can, just like in QuickSight, you can create calculations. Let's say you want to do a rolling calculation here. You can try that, and then you would be able to use that as in your Q search bar. So there's a few calculations like window, pre-fill, pre-ag, post-ag sort of calculations that is not supported in Q. We are building those additional capabilities, and you'll see a lot more coming in the future. But one way to solve for that would be to add calculations. So the next, after a few more questions, the next 15 minutes or so, I'll show you some advanced capabilities here in just a few minutes for named entities, filters, and calculations. Okay, are there other questions, Jill?
There are just a couple more. One question is, will median be available in the future?
Oh, great question. Actually, median is available in the search when you search to disambiguate, but it's being planned to be added to the enrichments, semantic enrichments here, semantic types here. So if you look over here, this is doing a count. This is a measure. This is a dimension. But let's take one. Show me number of tracks. Show me tracks by popularity. Median, I think, is available to be selected from here. This is also used as a dimension. Let's see. Yeah, so median is available here, but that you can try this. So there's a lot more capabilities or types here that you can change the aggregation types to. However, we're in the process of adding those to the drop downs here, which you don't see. So great question. So it's not available to set as a default.
Great. Can you maybe just also talk about how all readers can see published Q topics? Do they need to be granted access to selective topics?
Yes, I touched upon this, but let me go ahead and explain a little bit more. When you build your Q topic, the share button here that I talked about is how you can share to other readers within the organization. So in the example that I showed earlier, I have one person, but if I wanted to add, let's say I add Jill. So you have to, at the moment, add it either by a group or by user. So you can't select all users for this account yet, but you can add by a QuickSight group or by individual users. And when you select viewer, now Jill would be able to see the Q topic in that specific region that it was built. And so for a reader, they don't get access to the topic curation. In QuickSight, reader profiles or personas doesn't have an authoring capability. It's more of a consumption role. A reader will be able to see about topic, will be able to, let me refresh this page. Since we validated a few questions, you will be able to see that here in a second. So a reader can select the topics that he or she has access to. So if the reader has been granted read access or viewer access, they can select the topic, they can look at about the topic, see some sample questions, look at the data fields, and then they can start answering questions, asking questions rather. And I want to talk about two more things here before we jump to some, I want to take about 10 minutes to show some advanced capabilities. Okay, are there other questions? All right, if not, I want to go ahead and now talk about, it's a great segue. Once you share your topic, which I've shared with, let's say, Prachi and Jill, Now I can look and see their activity on the topic I created. So if I go into user activity here, hopefully within a few days, they will start to ask questions on this topic. You see here all of the questions that after I built the topic that we ran through it's available for me. So for example, let's go and look at the same one where we asked top 5 songs. Again, the demo topic, and this is a brand new topic, so let's recreate that scenario. So show me top 5 songs that are happy by popularity. This is the one that Q by default is picking the track name. So which is fair. Happy is a track name. Happy can be a song name. A happy song can be a track name rather. So there's so many possibilities. So if your reader provides a negative feedback and reports the issue saying incorrect interpretation as an example, obviously Q cannot read people's mind. You do have to be very specific in the sense, because the data has so many fields that says happy, obviously it's not quite able to read your mind yet. So question must misinterpreted, but a novice user might be able to, say this is what happened. But then what you can do as an author to help bridge that gap between the end user and the author, you can look and see, that this feedback came. So you can filter on questions with negative feedback, such as this. And you will see, if you click on this, you will see the comments the user provided. And now you can click on the exact question that they asked, and you see what exactly went wrong. And you say, all right, they picked happy, but maybe they asked for mood, right? Based on the comments. So now you can say, usually when they ask, it is a valence description. Now, this is just an example, but in some of your more regular work data sets, you might have net sales, gross sales. You might have some more sophistication around what metric that users need to pick, and you can bind that by selecting that. It'll say, do you want a synonym? For every time somebody says happy, do you want to save that as a default? In this case, maybe not, but you can also mark this as reviewed. So every time this question gets asked again, there is no ambiguity about that. So the user activity is a great way for you to know. The product has a great feedback loop mechanism built from your readers back to the authors. Now think about this. A lot of times when you're starting to build out a dashboard, you don't necessarily have all the requirements. A good dashboard takes anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks iteratively working with your customers or stakeholders. One way you could do is start with a simple vanilla dashboard, or not have a dashboard at all and just expose the topic to your readers and have them ask questions for about a week or so. This is also a way for you to collect requirements on what exactly are users wanting to know about the data set, and where should I spend time building pre-built analysis and dashboards. What are the most commonly asked questions? What drill downs or deep dives are they asking for? So you see the power of Q is you can use it as a standalone. You could use it in conjunction with your traditional dashboards. So it's really intended to enhance that reader experience and help them get their ad hoc questions answered. And for an author, it gives you a lot of insights, which before in the traditional business intelligence world, you can build amazing dashboards. And if the end user just downloads the entire dashboard, download data into Excel, which some of the tools provide you today, then you really don't know what are they doing with the data after they exit out of the dashboard. You don't really know what insights they're trying to glean or get from that. So I think the combination of QuickSight and Q would help all parties, the authors, the readers, and improve the overall adoption of just your BI tools within your company. The last tab I want to talk about is the verified answers here. This is where you can go through. We verified about 5-6 questions here, but you can go through and verify some more. Today the limit is 10, but obviously we're working to see how we can make this configurable for an author. But today when you click on the Q bar, there'll be 5 author verified and 5 most recent, but a total of 10. And likewise, in the about topic, there'll be a total of 10 that you could approve or review or verify. Now, we have a few more minutes, so let me go ahead and show you a few other advanced features. I showed you track details. So when you ask track details, you got a table back with a whole bunch of fields. How do we do that? So I do want to address that. But before that, you can also do custom message. For example, you can add a keyword here. Let's just say, let's just say country of, artist origin, for example. It's not part of this data set. So, and you can save this. So you can add custom messages. So somebody, when they ask a question on show me artist origin, if they do, or origin of the artist, usually they're going to ask origin of the artist. So then the message comes back, we do not support questions about artist origin at this time. So you can configure some custom messages. So if the user does ask things that are not in the topic, they will get that information. So that's pretty neat. Let's go back to the data tab. And also, if you go back to the summary tab really quickly, you will see some statistics being populated here, which is very cool. There's one negative feedback. I should probably thumbs up a lot of the questions too. So one thing that I haven't done, which I think is a common thing that other authors do, is you want to encourage your readers, and including yourself, to indicate positive or negative, so you're able to see that distribution over time and see where to invest additional enhancements. So let's go to the data tab. A few more things. If you noticed in the actions here, there's a bulk action, which if there are multiple metrics, let's say artist 2 popularity 3, and you can select bulk action. And there's some things that you can do. You can add synonyms. You can set if it's a measure or dimension. You can include or exclude. So you can do some bulk actions here. So that's one capability. The named entity is something that's really cool. This is what, for example, let's go back, and in the demo, I said, show me track details for someone you loved, or let's just say for blinding lights. Just to take some examples. How do you get a bunch of fields to show up? It's a logical grouping of fields that if someone might ask, show me track info, that you want the user to not just get track name, track ID, or release date, or artist. You want the related attributes to come together. One way to do that would be type in, show me, or just say track details or track name, artist, release date for blinding lights. Now this is laborious. Every time they ask for a song name, you'd want all these details come through. So 2 ways you can accomplish this. Like in this case, I wanted to show the person who asked the question. You don't need show me. It's just natural language friendly. I can type it in. But then every time, you don't want the user to say, every time I ask for a track name, I want all these details. So that's where named entity comes in. So you want to create a named entity and call it track info, track details, whatever resonates with you or with your users, track info. And then description, I can add that as a synonym. And let's just add some fields here. So the first thing I want is, I want the track name. I want the release date. Let's say I want the artist. I can also add artist 2 and artist 3. If there's data there, it might help. I can add the genre. Let's see where that might be. Artist 1. And then let's just go ahead and add some descriptors, loudness description. Is it loud? Is it sad? Is it verbose? And the acousticness, valence description. So yeah, so we've got a bunch of fields. So you can now save this. Now, as you see here, this has a different icon. It indicates it's a named entity, or think of it as a logical grouping of fields together. So now the same question, I can just ask very easily. Let's go ahead and delete those. And I can say show me, or I don't have to say show me. Just say track details or blinding lights. So first thing, Q underlined it, meaning, now this is where it's important for the user to understand. We just created that. It might take a few minutes for it to recognize. So let's go ahead and refresh the screen. And if sometimes it takes about up to a minute, but usually it's pretty fast. And if it doesn't pick the right named entity, we can disambiguate and have Q pick the right entity. So in this case, since it is taking a little bit of time, I can just say track details. Yeah, so I think sometimes it takes up to 2 minutes for it to save, but we'll show in a few minutes. So you will be able to recognize the track details, and then you'll be able to select that to get those. So let's just give it a few minutes here. We'll come back to that. Let's do another named entity. In the meantime, I want to show music features. How has the trends of the danceability and energy has evolved over time? So in that case, I want to look at a comparison of 4 metrics, but I want to call this as, music trends or music features. And let's just go ahead and do that as well. Since it's, so we want to look at maybe loudness. We'll look at energy. And let's take a look at speechiness and maybe one more. Maybe valence. And yeah, so let's see if we can save that. Okay, so now I'm going to refresh. See if it took here. Not yet. So it is taking a little bit of time. Oh, maybe not. There we go. So now I just typed in music features, but just to see if it recognized the named entity, and it did. So if I click on this, it did recognize the exact same named entity that we created, and it shows a combination of loudness, energy, speechiness, and valence. But what I want to really know is a yearly trend of this over time. So let's ask you that question. Now I can use this in a question as any other, as though it's a field in my data set, but it's a logical grouping. So show me a yearly trend of music features over time. Let's see what Q does. Great, it actually gave me a table. Let's see. A table is fine. Sometimes it has its own mind. It decides that this is the right visualization for it, which is great. Some people love tables, and you can export this to CSV and Excel. But I actually like to see this in a chart. I'm a more visual person. So let's see how this is doing. Interesting. Maybe because of the way the data is, it's pretty skewed up here. But we also have to note that we didn't really set the aggregations for some of those. So let's go ahead and fix that. That's probably what's causing the discrepancy here. So valence is an average, which is good. Speechiness, let's go ahead and set that to average as well. So as you see here, sometimes it's an iterative process. The more you spend time fixing a lot of these ahead of time, you get a better answer accuracy from Q. And then we did energy, which is an average. And then what was the other one that we did? Let's go back and check that. Loudness, energy, speechiness, and valence. So let's go make sure loudness has the right aggregation. There we go. I can see that I did not set that. I don't want it to sum. Let's set it to average. And now let's run the same question. Hopefully I see a better representation of the data. Let's see. Yeah, this looks better. I know the loudness is going down here, but as you see here, I need to understand what's going on with loudness. But as you see here, you see a representation over time of how the valence, speechiness, energy of the songs, of the tracks that are being built are evolving. So interesting. So let's look at the other one, the track details, and let's see how if that that works as expected. So you can ask, show me track details, and you can filter for any song, any artist. So let's just say the one that we've been working with throughout. So now it recognizes, like I said, it took, sometimes these named entities take about a couple minutes to save. So now when a user asks track details, it not only gives them the track name, but it gives them the release date, the artist, there's no secondary artist there, the genre, and it gives the loudness, speechiness, valence, description. So you get like an ad hoc report or table to your question. So one thing I haven't talked about is the link to visual. This is also powerful. In this example, I can show this back, and since this is a different region, I don't have a dashboard here, but if you had a question that you asked, and sometimes like forecasting, for example, if you wanted to forecast, or if you some of the functionality that QuickSight provides that Q doesn't have, or you want to bind this to a table that is a little bit more with formatting built into QuickSight, you can actually link this to a visual and to an existing visual on a dashboard. So every time you ask the question, the table could be coming from QuickSight dashboards as well. But you don't have to. But just knowing that the capability exists is what I want to call. The last feature I want to talk about, I think I touched upon calculated fields. You can certainly play with calculated fields. There's a whole QuickSight workshop on advanced calculations. Just note that Q supports some of the basic calculations, a lot of the window functions, a lot of the aggregations, pre-ag, post-ag, level of detail type calculations are not quite supported yet, but definitely you can do a lot of the traditional calculations that you would do with if then else, and create ratios of metrics and so on. You can try the rolling averages as well. So let's look at now filters. This is important because QuickSight Q, you can, like blinding lights is a filter that's applied automatically. So you might wonder, well, what is this filter? Well, there are two types of filters here in addition to just natural language capability and just filtering in the question. If you have a grouping of fields, like for example, I want to group artists, a bunch of artists, and call them as my favorite artists. So I can just say, like, let's create a filter called my favorites. And I want to take artist and I want to apply a custom filter. And I want to include in this screen, we don't have the values coming from the data set yet, but that's being worked on, where you can actually just select the list of artists from the dropdown. But for now, I'm just going to put in, I want to see BTS, Taylor Swift, since I'm working with these artists, and maybe Julia Michaels. I like Julia Michaels as well. So these are my, let's just say my favorite artists for now. And I could use this as a named filter. So let's not worry about the bottom options yet. Let's save this. Okay, so now what I want to do is ask the question, show me track details for my favorites, right? So my favorites, as you see here, is showing up as a filter. So let's go ahead and ask the question. And we can use the named entity called track details as well. And we're combining a filter that we built along with the named entity to get a combination of results, like an ad hoc query or ad hoc question. So now let's see what Q is doing. So I asked, show me track details for my favorites. So it recognized my favorites. It also recognized track details, but it's giving me an option if I want to switch it. I don't really want to switch. So, and it's showing data for BTS, Julia Michaels, Taylor Swift, and breaking it down by the named entity called track details. Now let's clean this up a little bit more and let's see how this is doing. So if I want to actually look at this, let me switch this to a pivot table. And now I want to also switch the columns to see by artist first. So I want to make sure. So now you see here, I've got BTS, track dates. You know, I don't really need these. I probably should take it out of the named entity. They're not adding any value. They're mostly null. And then I see a lot of the information for my favorite artists, which is BTS, Taylor Swift. And I can also say in 2019 or 2020. So maybe filter this down further so that I can just look at a specific year, and now it will apply the filter. It does not persist with the layout until I mark it as reviewed. So as you see here, now I'm using a combination of named entity as well as filters, a named filter, to be able to achieve this sort of a ad hoc report. So I wanted to show you how powerful this is based on what you might, what requirements you might have. So I can mark this as reviewed, so the next time it'll persist the pivot table and so on. So that is a named filter. Now let's look at a data set filter and also look at how you can apply it always and conditionally. So let's go ahead and create another filter here and call it a year filter. So this one, the end user doesn't see this if you do a data set filter. So you can name this discretely, whatever you want to call this. And I want to say, let's look at the release year, right? And what I want to do is say, actually, I want to do a release date, maybe. Yeah, let's look at the release date. The year is actually a numeric field. And I want to say between, and I want to do, let's just say 2015. Really don't want the time frame here. And then, oops, not 2025. I said 2015, and then let's just do till 2019. So if I just want to look at 2020 maybe, so 5 full years. So okay, so let's just change this. All right, now I want to say apply the filter anytime the data set is used, always apply. What this means is this is only going to be applicable to your topic. If you use that data set in your analysis or dashboards, it doesn't impact those. Sometimes you may want to exclude certain company codes, or if you have order statuses, you can exclude orders that are canceled. In this case, what if I just want to look at 2015 to 2020, but I don't want the users to specify that every time. I want this to be the default filter for any question that user asks. So I can save this. So this becomes a filter. And now if let's go back to asking the very first question that we asked, show me number of tracks by artist released last year. You can just test this question. I think I want to look at a trend. So show me maybe yearly trend so that I can verify the answer. Oh, and then want to take out last year as well. So now you will see the data, but this is pretty, pretty long. So let me just ask a simple question. Show me number of tracks released by year. That would be a better comparison question here. So now I should be able to see only the years 15 through 2019. Oh, until 2020. Sorry about that. Yeah, there's a little sorting problem here that needs to be fixed. So there we go. We can change this to increasing order. So now I see the filter doesn't really appear for the user. So this is a way for authors to provide a default filter for every question if there's a requirement as such in your data set. So 2015 to 2020, the users don't have to know that they have to apply this every time. A great use case for excluding certain codes or certain order statuses, or in this case, just want to include certain years. That would be a good example. Now, the same filter, if I go to the year filter and say conditionally apply. So here I'm selecting apply always unless the question results in an explicit filter from the data set. I know it's a little confusing. It's confusing to me too, but what this implies at a high level is it's a conditional filter. So if I save this, if I go back and ask the same question, show me number of tracks released by year, it'll still give me the same answer because I didn't explicitly ask for a different value. So the default will apply, but sometimes you may want to look at it for another year. Let's go back and switch you may want to look at it for 2021, for current year. So, or you may want to go back to 2014 and see. So, but I can specifically override this and ask, show me number of tracks released in 2014. So I'm asking an explicit value from the year field for 2014. So show me number of tracks released in 2014. It now gave me 9,836 and overrode the filter for default values for 2015 to 2020. So this is a way where a really good use case is, generally speaking, you want to exclude it, but there might be situations where you might explicitly ask for a particular value. So I know it's a little confusing, it's a little bit more advanced, but just wanted to let you know that there are a lot of use cases our customers had for a capability like this. So we have options to always apply or conditionally apply or don't apply. But again, this is only at the data set level. So that's a great capability that you can take advantage of for some advanced topic configurations. So what I want to leave you with is, again, I know we have about maybe 10, 12 minutes left. So I want to leave you with a few things. I want to talk about what constitutes a great topic again, because that is very important. You can throw a data set in. Again, Q works on all types of data sets that are structured today. But really, as you saw here, you really want to spend a little bit of time curating the topic, not a whole lot of time. As you saw, a data set like this with a few changes or enrichments, we're able to get a very successful reader experience here. So you want to exclude fields that are not relevant. So you keep the topic for natural language query very tight and clean. You want to add business-friendly names and synonyms. That is very important for a great topic configuration. You also want to then review and edit field settings. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the activity and then you're reviewing and editing the field settings here. That is very important. You want to share your topic. Don't forget to share with your authors and readers so that they could ask additional questions. And then you review their questions in their user activity, take their feedback, and then you work iteratively on your topic design. So I wanted to leave you with that as the 5 best practices. And at this point, also, this concludes our hands-on workshop portion. And we have about 10 minutes to see if I can answer questions that has come through chat.
Yeah, we have just a few questions that would be helpful to go over. One of the questions would be, how will Q treat and/or? For instance, show me albums related on 2014 and 2016.
Yeah, so actually Q supports actually ands and ors. So if you ask the question, show me tracks for BTS and Taylor Swift. In natural language, you're asking, you want the results for both. Behind the scenes, the interpretation might say or, but what it's doing is it's actually doing an from a SQL-like structure, right? So it is giving you an and or an or based on how you ask the question. So if you ask, show me tracks for BTS and Taylor Swift, you're getting both of those. But if you ask a question, show me tracks released in certain year or in another year for BTS, in that case, it also does an implicit or. So you should actually try those 2 questions out. So Q will handle both of those in the way that you intended to ask the question.
Great. Another question is, how can you see the data of the topic after you added the calculated field? Is that something you can go over?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually a really good question. So let me see if I can switch back here. You're seeing a resources slide here, which I wanted to talk about, but let me go back here. So today in in the topic view, if you add a calculated field, you don't really see the value, the previews. So that is something that the team is working towards. So you can add a calculated field, for example, let's just call it concrat, and we'll just concatenate artist 2, for example, and then add, oops. So if you can, yeah, if you actually create, let's just go back here, sorry. All right, so if you create a concatenated field, let's just, and add it with genre, let's see if this works. I may have the syntax right or wrong, let's see, oh, that's great. So now this is a calculated field. Now, today we cannot see the value previews for a calculated field. So the team is working on that. So one thing that I would recommend is, because you don't see the value previews, they're also not indexed to be used. So I would recommend moving these to the data set for now. That is what was done in danceability descriptions. To be able to see these values, if it's a metric calculation, by all means, I think I would recommend creating in the topic. Until we have the capability to get the values for string fields, you can switch those calculations to the data set. So you could go into the summary tab here, and you can actually click the ellipsis here and say edit in data prep. And this brings you back to the data set editor. And I would recommend you move those calculations there just to show you, yeah, and you can create calculated fields here. And then when you refresh the topic, it comes through with value previews, and then those are indexed, and you can use those in search. But it's coming.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, if you wanted to, I've shared the links for the resources that you were just about to show, and I do think it would be super helpful for you to talk a little bit about how you think these resources can be helpful to those who have been spending time. And I did also want to flag, it would be wonderful for those of you who have spent so much in-depth time with us today to give us your feedback. As you know and can tell, this is a really hot topic, and we are so appreciative of Priya, you being able to share so much great detail. I know that it's going to continue to evolve quite a bit, so it's super important for us to, hear feedback from attendees on what's been valuable and how we can continue to enhance your experience of QuickSight and Q together through these kind of in-depth workshops. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Priya, to go through some of these resources as kind of the final phase of our time together today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jill. Yeah, so today for the demo and workshop, I took a relatively fun topic, which is Spotify data. Granted that that's not the topic that you'll be working with on your work environments. So there is actually a self-paced workshop here, Learn QuickSight. If I click on that, let's see if it'll take me to that. And you can actually go through step by step on SaaS sales data set, which is traditionally your sales information. It'll walk you through the exact same things we talked about, but you'll have a different data set there. I also wanted to mention the same SaaS sales information. We also have what's called a sample topic. A lot of customers, they see it, they may not recognize it, but I wanted to call that out again. You can actually create a new sample topic. When you do that, there's a video I highly recommend you to watch, which is the 5 great steps we talked about. This is on the worldwide revenue or the sales topic. You can watch the video, create the sample topic. I will skip that now because I have the sample topic here. So it'll show software sales as an example, and it'll walk you through step by step when you first build a topic, what are the 5 best steps. So I highly recommend all of you to try that out on software sales, which is a fictitious sales company. And then going back to the other assets, we have a lot of domain-specific QuickSight dashboards along with Q topics built on Demo Central, which is our learning platform there as well. So let's take an example just to show you what that might look like. This is on pharmaceutical data. It's going to come up in a second here. So if you go into Ask Q on the left-hand side and click on Q Pharmaceutical Trials, there's financial services, campaign ads and spend, student enrollment, and hospital revenue. So depending on the domain that you're in, you are now able to look at some of the QuickSight capabilities with advanced QuickSight capabilities such as freeform layout and so on. You see how you can build a dashboard and also how you can use Q to layer on top and ask some of the questions that are more detailed and more specific. You know, show me demographic information, or show me all the subjects that had screen failure. This is an adverse events, a clinical trial data set. Similarly, you have a financial services data set you can play with as well. So there are lots of great resources here. Campaign ads and spends, I want to flash that really quickly. For folks in the ads and marketing space, you can definitely ask questions here. And then these are embedded QuickSight dashboards along with Q that's embedded on top. So certainly you can look at our QuickSight embedding workshop and follow the same pattern for Q. And also you can also create, since the getting started experience is something that we're just starting out with, there's another deployment option where you can create a page. This is just Q embedded with the page on information about what that topic contains. And if you also look at SaaS sales, there's various flavors of how you can implement QuickSight dashboards along with Q on top. So this is an executive dashboard. And then you have a Q topic where you can drill down into the details as well. And there is a Q topic dictionary. So combination of the topic dictionary with the getting started experience, which is being evolved, you have a plethora of options here to explore QuickSight and Q. Let's go back to the slide here. There's links to homepage, Q documentation, there's an AWS news blog, and more importantly, as Jill mentioned, we now have our community. So I would encourage you all to, after this session, to go back and try building a topic on your data. And if you're running into any questions, issues, or if you have any questions, feel free to use the tag NLQ and post a question onto our community site. With that, I will. I hope you had. I hope this session was informative, and you have some fun with the Spotify data, as I know I did. And look forward to hearing from you and working with everyone on QuickSight Q. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Jill.
Thank you so much, Priya. I know that it really was wonderful to hear your in-depth descriptions today. This is kind of the last of a series of 10 workshops that we've been doing almost on a weekly basis with a goal to really go deep on key topics with our subject matter experts for QuickSight and all the ways it can create value in your organizations. I'm showing here the link to give us survey feedback, and this link is also in the chat window. With this, I would say that we do have a number of topics that we're thinking about adding to our workshop series for the new year. I would be remiss if I didn't also highlight that the biggest AWS conference of the year is coming up in just a couple of weeks. There are a number of sessions focusing in on QuickSight and QuickSight Q during reInvent. So I'll share out as well the link to register for reInvent, which is happening both in person and virtually. So there are a number of really awesome QuickSight sessions that will be happening, going deep into how customers and even Amazon itself are using Q today now that it's generally available. So with that, thank you so much for your time, and we hope to connect with you again for multiple sessions in the new year. And again, feedback is always helpful, and we should have the recording of this session posted to our QuickSight YouTube channel by the end of the week. With that, thank you so much.